Merry ExPats, everybody. After a week-long sabbatical for the holiday and for me specifically to travel around and leave Lucas hanging in the dust, we are back. I am your temporary host for the first part of the show, Josh Downey, joined as always by
What's up, fellas? Luke's Cobra back at it. Let's do this.
fellas, dude. We might have some ladies. Some ladies
Ladies, I
listening. That's
apologize.
this, and don't forget about non-binary people. You
Yeah.
should probably include them as well. So let's tighten up, Lucas. I know it's been a week off, but you're already starting off, on a sour foot. But let's talk about Buffalo, shall we? Admittedly, my exposure to the Buffalo game was limited. I was working like all day Sunday and then traveled all day Monday, so I've just been kind of taking in bits and pieces on the backside. But our resident X and O expert, Lucas Cobry, has got some takes for us, and we're going to kind of fire away. But let's start with, I think, an improved offensive performance, at least, in that first half from AVP and Drake May. Do you have any kind of general thoughts, or you just want to go right into the weeds, my friend?
I think I think they did look good. I think it was a strong game for AVP. I think he obviously listened to some of the criticism with the Drake May runs. I think that's a huge part of the offense going forward. I mean, probably not the next two games, but like in a long-term scheme, I think that's talked about it on here before. I really love what the quarterback design run game gives you, and I think it's a unique look that is really tough to deal with if you're clicking on a lot of other things as well. So I love seeing that. I think you obviously had two bad fumbles from Stevenson and Gibson, which kind of killed out the momentum. But other than that, I think it was a really good running game. But it's really hard to overlook Ramondre Stevenson fumbling for the seventh time this year, and so that's going to be tough. And then I think the defense strangely looked really good. I mean, like you had obviously the fumble, which takes seven off the board, and then there was another fumble, or yeah, there was the fumble in the end zone for seven, and there was another fumble that if you don't give up, it was a pick or basically a pick three. The Bills' offense didn't move the ball at all, and so I think the defense should be proud. I think Covington put together a good plan. I think you saw Josh Allen do some things that he hasn't done in a couple of years, where he tried to do too much and probably bit off more than he could chew on the Mapu interception. But they kept him in the pocket and they forced him to beat him with his arm. And I think obviously they didn't run him too much, but I mean that was encouraging. I don't know if you had anything like that you took away, but I was encouraged.
I mean, it's hard to argue that, there wasn't some level of defensive improvement when you jump out to like a 14-0 lead against, one of the, Super Bowl favorites and kind of what has become like a perennial contender in the AFC. I have trouble giving like Covington too many props when it's like we're looking at like, a porous run defense that like
Yeah.
didn't get any better necessarily. I think there might have been a concerted effort on the part of the Bills to just like play with a little less physicality given how, intense their last few matchups have been against like top level talent in the league. And frankly, the Patriots don't fall into that category. So, it's I don't know. It's easy to look at some of the positives, particularly in that first half, but uh, when you kind of allow a comeback like that, granted against one of the best players in the NFL, but it wasn't necessarily a Josh Allen game as much as it was a James Cook game, and
Yeah.
uh, he's again you have to count like the big gain, the big touchdown, so it's kind of hard to give too much weight to the averages, but he essentially averaged almost 10 yards a carry. Uh, that's not great, and
Yeah.
half of it might be on one rush, but still that's not. There doesn't seem to be any level of consistency run stopping, and that's kind of worrying because I think going into the season, so much of the narrative was more so about like the pass rush. What are we going to do on those edges? What are we going to do without Judon? And then on the interior, from more so a pass rush standpoint, because I think we look at Barmore as more of a pressure guy than necessarily a run stop guy.
Sure.
What were we going to do, without him being consistently in the fold? And I think we're just seeing that, pile up over time. And, it's it is concerning. I think, going forward, there is some hope, especially, with the secondary, as you're saying, we're seeing some improvement there. But again, like, it is a little harder to tell, how much is like our development from like a coaching and player standpoint, and how much is just other teams like starting to get a little more tactical later on in the season, whether or not they have certain spots clinched up, what seeding Buffalo is fighting for, what games they're really going to have to like kind of turn on the Jets. And like that's part of it. Like part of coaching, and Bill was great at this for so long, was utilizing certain players or underutilizing them late in the season when maybe there isn't as much to play for, or like some of your guys are high level playoff performers, and you don't necessarily need them to be expending all this energy to break silly records late in the season. So we'll see if
Yeah,
teams like Philly end up going after like an Eric Dickerson type record. I don't know if they could or should, but just things like that. And the Patriots aren't necessarily in that position. We're in the position where we have to build going forward. And you had mentioned, and I wanted to talk about this with you as well, the kind of 180 from Alex Van Pelt this week in terms of designing runs for and around Drake May, which I think we both discussed would be a positive moving forward and should be a part of the Patriots' attack, particularly in late game scenarios, and more specifically in the red zone. And I think like it'd be foolish not to expect and really want these things to kind of come to fruition in game. But at the same time, like a week after, he said, if we were a competitive team, I'd be running Drake May, strategic design runs for Drake May. It's like weird that he suddenly pulls this club out of the bag. Like last week's one of those weeks where it's like you're playing Arizona, you're probably, going to be able to expose certain aspects of their defense, although it's probably a middle of the pack defense, somewhat similar to Buffalo in a lot of respects. Uh, it's just bizarre that maybe it's like we want to punch the Bills in the mouth. We want to give them something. It's in division game, so they're going to be more familiar with our stuff. So we really have to kind of switch it up. But it just seems so late in the season for him to philosophically switch. It's just kind of been a hallmark of the Mayo tenure here, and I really have a lot of faith in Gerard and have hope going forward. But it is kind of like they made this concerted effort to talk about how we're a different, transparent organization now post Belichick, and instead of being transparent, it's almost like everything is murky, and the coaches don't really know what their philosophy is going to be, the next week, let alone going into next season. And it's like guys are almost, enabled to just give answers that don't necessarily line up with their, plans going forward. And I'd almost rather some level of, blunt clarity, like with Bill, just to be like, no, like, I'm not going to talk to you. I don't care. Like that
yeah,
to me is almost more reassuring than like, oh, this is actually what we're doing. Like, we're gonna lay it all out on our sleeves. We're gonna let you know because we're like we're that type of organization. We're player first, and we're all about chatting with the media. But then like it's all lip service, and we might switch it around next week, but not because like there's any real kind of uh, I don't know, fundamental like strategy behind it. It's not like misdirection. Not that that's really something you necessarily get a whole lot of when it comes to like NFL guys in the media. It's just, another layer of inconsistency that when you look at, a lot of inconsistencies
hmm
from like a coaching and personnel player standpoint, performance wise this season, it's tough. It's not ideal, but I'm not willing to just like, jump off the wagon now or anything crazy, just
yeah.
because I might be upset with that.
No, I think it's important to look at how they used him running. I think a lot of it was in short yardage situations and in the red zone. And I think if you're willing to convert to that, that's not a huge difference for me because I think it does add that much value in the X's and O's. Whereas if you're like, it was clear for a long time that they were not going to run him and that they didn't want him to run as much after the concussion. But his legs have been probably the brightest part of this whole season. So if you're not willing to lean into that, I don't think you should be able to stick around. And so it was I was happy to see it happen because it's so effective if you use it properly. And I think Drake's good at it. I think he's got the background to do it. I think he was okay at it in college. I think he'll only get better at it. I think it's something that benefits your offensive line. I think it's a way to slow down the pass rush. It's a way to create more numbers in the running game. It's a way to create more numbers in the passing game. You're going to open Drake up. It's just I think it's a great way to play the game. And I think something that you saw them try to do it with Mac Jones, which I think is pretty funny, and he's obviously that kind of point guard quarterback, but I don't think it was. It's not nearly as effective because there's that third option of Drake keeping it, and I think those plays are a lot more threatening to a defense than just straight up running the ball or running slants on the backside or like I think you are keeping the defense on their toes and forcing players to think about things in a lot of different ways, which I think is a really unique part of football, and I think it's a unique part of Drake May's game. And clearly, like he was the better he was the better Josh Allen on Sunday, which was cool. So yeah, I don't know. He didn't really lean into any of the Josh Allen Drake May mistakes, whereas we got him one time. So I mean that was cool. But yeah, no, I hear you.
We
It's fun.
got so that kind of leans into it. Like I
Huh?
uh I will say we are having a little bit of connection issues.
Yeah.
You're reconnecting here and there, so I want to make sure that I'm not cutting you off.
Yeah.
So let me know. The kind of I guess the second part of that discussion that I wanted to get in with you, I guess, kind of plays into like long term solutions at certain positions on offense. If like we expect, you know, some level of raw kind of playmaking hiccups with Drake May, which I think, admittedly, we had a couple of fluky ones this year, but I think it's been better from like a turnover worthy play standpoint for Drake May than I think a lot of people thought out of the gate. I think they thought it'd be like real raw, like Josh Allen rookie season type of raw, where it's the bad outweighing the good in terms of just on a play by play basis.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think we're getting a really like intelligent display from a quarterback like this, but it's hard not to feel like there's like a certain element of like he understands that there's a complete lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball. So he's not exactly throwing into danger areas as much because I don't know if he, internally thinks, yeah, I think, Kayshon Boutte's going to come down, in double coverage with this ball. Whereas like he's still thrown a couple of those, particularly to Boutte downfield. But I'm like, if he had T. Higgins, he probably would have like five more picks just on throwing
Sure.
the ball downfield, but also probably like 10 more touchdowns or,
Yeah.
there's got to be some sort of correlation there. So my thought is like, if we want to get the best out of Drake May and going forward, understanding that guys like him, I think more so Josh Allen from like a playmaking type than maybe a Herbert who's a little more cautious with the ball. And we're going to talk more about him as we kind of bleed into the Chargers preview. But can we afford to pair someone like Drake May, who I think we want to take the training wheels off, and I'm not saying we have like Mac Jones level training wheels on the kid this year. That's not true, and I think it would diminish a lot of the positives we've seen from kind of Drake May from just in terms of his timing, anticipation, understanding, and reading defenses has been impressive. But like, can we afford to pair him with a running back that's going to have 7 fumbles on the season as like the workhorse guy?
Yeah.
Uh, can we afford like to put our eggs in the Drake May basket and then pair him with an equally like kind of I don't want to say equally because it's almost like disrespectful to Drake in terms of like I think how careful he's been with the football at times, and obviously the turnovers say one thing, but I really do think that it's been a positive generally, despite the couple
Yeah.
turnovers today. Uh, yeah. Can we afford to pair him with Stevenson? Do you have any kind of thoughts or questions about his long-term future with the organization? And, just, what ball security means for us going forward if we're going to, go out and maybe draft a Travis Hunter or sign a T. Higgins and kind of unlock certain aspects of Drake May's game, how maybe someone like Stevenson might inhibit that progress.
No, I think you're locked in long term with him, which is kind of unfortunate. But I think this is a really bad year. I mean, there's been that stat that gets floated around 100 times, but it's seven fumbles coming into this year and 7 fumbles this year. So I don't think there's any real chance that you see this happen again next year. But I think it all goes back to that kind of discussion that you're having about Mayo and his issues throughout his tenure here. Because when you go back into the training camp, and they were saying that they're not really punishing players for jumping off sides and having false starts, and I think that all goes back to coaching, taking care of the ball. All of that is really a core philosophy of the coach, and obviously, I think we were probably pampered a little bit with Bill and how buttoned up his operation was, but I think it's really important to assess that there are a lot of mental errors going in, and probably the only person who's not committing mental errors on this scale is Drake, which is shocking. I mean, I think I don't really know who's not like who's a really heads up player on this team other than him is probably like Hunter Henry. Like I think maybe
The tight end
Sewell.
room in general has been pretty, I think, satisfactory, to say
Yeah,
the least.
and the disappointing thing about that is the interception that Drake throws is to Hooper, and it kind of looked like a little. I couldn't tell if it was a bad throw or like maybe it was a little bit of a miscommunication, but either way, I think that was a little bit disappointing. But I think it all goes back to the coaching, and I really would like to see them tighten everything up next year because you cannot have penalties like this. You cannot have fumbles like this with a young quarterback who, like you said, is prone to be making these turnovers. But I think Ramondre is going to be a long term staple of this team. So not a long term, but definitely for 2025. So I don't
And
know.
I,
Yeah.
and I think if
But
he is, we really need to start investing in something that you had kind of talked about in your pregame write up. And by investing, I don't necessarily mean financially, because I think we might have someone in the building that can kind of fill this role. But you know, receiving threats out of the backfield, which is
yeah.
something, especially you think for young quarterbacks, uh, is such a valuable asset to have going forward. And I think that's why, despite maybe him not having the usage and the injury, obviously, but that's why a team like the Commanders goes out and gets an Austin Eckler to
Hmm.
pair with Brian Robinson Jr. Because on the surface, you're like, it's almost similar to us with Brian Robinson and Ramondre, which are kind of, you're not like necessarily the same build, but you're looking at a similar role and usage for them.
Yeah.
And so both teams, Patriots and Commanders, go out and get someone that I think provides a different level of versatility. Gibson, with his speed, and I think does have some threat in the passing game. And then obviously Eckler just kind of as a well-rounded back, granted, who might be over the hill, but was one of the best pass catching backs in the NFL the last half decade or so.
And healthy
So
quarterback, which is like notable
yes, yeah, and he was Justin Herbert's blanket,
for
his
years.
bib, his binky for the start of his career when he wasn't getting the support from the front office in terms of acquiring high end receiving talent. Really kind of wearing the tread thin on Keenan Allen's tires late in his career,
Yeah.
and obviously the Quentin Johnson pick kind of blew up in their face. At least that was an attempt to swing, but it took them a long time to go out and get Herbert someone like that, and still he was able to be like a productive, I think, high end quarterback because of a guy like Eckler.
Yeah, no, I think that's the interesting thing because they had a deep threat in Mike Williams and a great receiver who could threaten all three levels in Keenan Allen. So it's important to have that check down. I just think that the reason you probably don't see them checking it down to Gibson and Ramondre is you just don't have anybody who threatens the defense vertically. Like I mean, you see, like if you watch that game, man, they were going man to man across the board and just said we're gonna make Drake and these kids beat us on the outside. And the encouraging thing is that when they tried to go straight up cover zero man to man, Drake was able to get the ball out of his hands and beat the blitz. But I mean, when they were dropping people, like it was, I was nervous. There were a couple times where I was sure that he was going to throw an interception when he didn't. So I was very impressed. I mean, I think we all know that. So
Yeah. Do you have any other kind of whether or not it be player spotlights, coaching issues and/or positives from this game before we kind of transition over into some Chargers talk here with this game coming up tomorrow, or I
Booty,
guess. By the time this airs, it's probably today. But
Yeah.
carry on.
No, I think Booty played a great game. I think obviously everything was boosted by that one like right before the half thing, but I think he really did play a good game. I think there was a time where there was definitely a time where Drake missed him on one. I think he and Drake have a decent connection. I think that's not. I think that's worth noting. I think a lot of people have been saying that he's like deserves to be on. I think he's been great all year. I think he could be a wide receiver too, which is probably a hot take, but I think he's actually. I mean, he runs hard. He's got a great connection. I mean, he runs his route the right way. It's not like he's running him short or like breaking before he needs to. Obviously, he's had a few drops here and there, but I think he deserves a chance to be on the field next year, even if you're signing T. Higgins and drafting Travis Hunter. So I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I've been really encouraged by Booty. And then on the defense, I would like. We all know that I'm a big Alex Austin guy. I think he looked phenomenal again. But yeah, I mean the defense and the run game, like you said earlier, I think we're especially we talked about it earlier off the pod, but like with the Raiders and the Jaguars, everything that's just happened in the draft, Abdul Carter looks more and more enticing to me because given you signed T. Higgins, I think you're benefiting yourself tremendously by signing somebody who's actually he's going to make a play on defense. And I don't think you have in that front seven. You don't have one guy right now. Like we can have the debate about Barmore and whether or not he'll ever get back to that true football shape. And I think he probably will be better than he was in the limited showcases he had this year. But I think you need a real presence, and I think I think it's worth it. I think it's worth talking about addressing it in the draft because he's a very good player. I mean, they were running. I mean, he's been a great player all year, but they were running away from him every down on whenever that was against SMU. So I look forward to seeing him in the next round of the playoffs. So
It's so tempting for me, and again, this just comes from watching a team with 3 wins, but just to kind of drop everything and go like heavy into draft talk,
yeah,
uh, and give my take on things. You've watched a lot more college football, especially in these past couple weekends than I have. So it's hard for me to kind of keep up with your knowledge in that regard. I will say like I am hesitant to want to take like a pass rush specialist when like I'm looking at a bottom tier run defense, and it's
yeah,
like I don't want to take Graham, the Michigan guy, and I don't think that's like worth an interior guy is necessarily worth a top 10 pick. But at the same time, I do think like if we can shore up that middle, like maybe then we see like some real development from Keon White. Maybe then we're not asking too much of Anthony Jennings, and maybe we get a healthier Barmore back. Then we're potentially looking at a different front seven, or at least a front four. But I don't know. A lot of that just depends on health. And I don't think you're wrong. I think like uh, Abdul Carter's kind of like a can't miss prospect. When you're a team in dire need of pass rushers and efficiency rushing the passer. So I'm sure we're going to kind of talk about that ad nauseum in the coming weeks and months. And
yeah,
I think probably because we're a little behind the 8 ball today, I won't. It's really tempted for me to just talk your ear off about certain draft things, especially because we talked about. I was texting you. I was on the runway just earlier today about what the implications were of Oakland losing and
mhm,
having Jacksonville at the 3 spot with us at 2, and then you have kind of Tennessee and Cleveland around there, and kind of what these teams' needs are, and how Oakland falling might kind of change our trajectory in terms of a trade back scenario.
mhm,
Uh, but that could change this weekend. I mean, given a
yeah,
lot of these teams are going to play each other in divisional matchups, and they're not good teams going head to head. So, these things are really subject to change. But right now, it looks like for the first time in a while that the Patriots might actually have uh, some bargaining room here at the second overall pick, which is enticing.
yeah,
But I also, I'm hesitant to get too excited just because I think that Jacksonville being the third pick might also have some bargaining power,
yeah,
unless Depends on which out of us in Jacksonville who really wants Travis Hunter more. Because I think he's probably going to end up going to one of us too, and I think we're the two teams that probably need him. But I do think we might be like hey, Jacksonville, you take Hunter. We want the trade down, and then I'm comfortable taking a guy like Carter or Banks. Then I'm like we did our due diligence, and hopefully we can come out of that with maybe another first round pick or two. Probably not two. I think that some of the organizations that have gotten fleeced in recent years, not to name names, but have probably hurt the market on trading up for a top three pick. But at the same time, the market in the NFL, it seems like there's always more dollars coming in than going out. So
Yeah,
it's hard for me at the same time to not see us like getting a haul if we do trade out of two, unless like we do an immediate swap 2 for 3 with Jacksonville, which I think could be interesting. Like I wouldn't necessarily rule that out. If we do like a pick swap with them and maybe kind of trade some assets around if they're like, hey, we want Hunter. And then we're like, all right, we get some additional value in assets, and then we're taking, a tackle and or Carter at 3, and it kind of makes more sense at that point. But
yeah,
let me not get too far into the weeds there. Uh,
yeah.
any last thoughts on Buffalo before I kind of punt downfield into the Chargers preview for tomorrow or
Just
today?
like we've talked about the running defense a ton, but like every week, it's like the averages don't count, like because we've given up a long run. It's like, dude, every week we're giving up a long run. At this point, like you have to maybe it deserves its own category, the long run average, but it's disheartening to see. That's the one that hurts the most. But
Totally agree.
I think like just to kind of wrap it up, I think the Bills are a really good team. I think that's probably the worst they're going to play for the rest of the season, and I would hate to see them win, but like win the Super Bowl, obviously. But if they knocked out Mahomes along the way, I wouldn't be mad. But I think Lamar is gonna Lamar's got that MVP locked up, and I mean, with 1 week to go for him, I think it's. I mean, he did a 180 with Allen, which is pretty cool to see as a Buffalo hater and a Josh Allen hater. But
You're not a Josh Allen hater. There's no way you're a Josh
it's like
Allen
a
hater,
love
dude.
hate relationship. But
It's hard to be a Drake May lover and not appreciate the path that was paved for him by a guy like Josh Allen.
yeah, the he's yeah. I don't want to gush about Josh Allen with her.
I'm not gonna do too much gushing, especially
Yeah,
post mortem after this game. But I'm also looking at him like, damn, like I just hate that he's playing in division in Buffalo because I hate for him that he's got to go up against Drake May for the next 10 plus years. Because I think all this talk about Josh Allen, I think Drake May could be just as good if not better. So I'm hoping that's the case, but. I don't want to get too ahead of myself when we're looking at a 3-win team, but just Drake May seems week after week to kind of push the right buttons,
I know.
even if his performance in totality isn't great, but just like what he says, the pressers, just kind
He's,
of like the way he develops, certain aspects of his game week after week, just. Some of the throws he makes, again, with timing, anticipation, and most importantly for me, the way that he's reading the defense. It seems like the game is coming to him
mhm.
I'm not gonna say like it's slowed down for him perfectly, like you're saying, like people say about Mahomes at this point, but it's coming to him, really natural and in like normal game speed, and it doesn't seem like he's been flustered at all by the transition from the ACC to the NFL, which
Yeah,
is such a relief because like that's the fear when you're playing a guy like that, like. That's the knock when you're looking at Jaden Daniels versus Drake May with the second or third pick in last year's draft. It's Jaden Daniels is playing NFL talent, week after week. Drake May wasn't. What does that mean going forward? Because we see a lot of guys that go to non-power 5 schools from a quarterback standpoint that look great and don't always kind of come together, and that competition doesn't always sit well with them. Carson Wentz kind of a guy that comes to mind.
sure.
Uh, Granted, there's a lot of examples of quarterbacks that buck that trend, so I'm not gonna, hitch my horse to that wagon. But that's just kind of food for thought going forward. But let's transition. We're about a half hour through into some Bolts talk, dude.
Yeah, let's
Into
do it.
some Chargers, the other team from LA.
Yeah, I I don't know. They have a an emphasis on running, which is terrifying. But
Yeah.
I think like After last week, I've said this about a lot of games this year, and like I think they have a chance to win, which is strange given that we're 3 and whatever we are. But like I think if you play the game the right way, if they play like the New England Patriots of old, where they just don't shoot themselves in the foot, I really do believe that this team can hang with anybody. I think Drake gives you that chance. It's so different than last year watching this team, where it's just like, all right, we didn't score on the first drive, and we didn't
Yeah.
hold. Like it's completely different watching them. So I don't know. You got anything off the start?
First of all, I think we need to thank the schedule makers, for, well, maybe not thank them for giving us, kind of a tough stretch at the end of the season, but just for giving us back-to-back matchups with like Drake May's pro comps. And you see a lot
Yeah,
in the
right.
media. I think Tom Curran, came out last week and was like, Drake May is actually more Justin Herbert than Josh Allen, kind of in his preview for the matchup. And it's just like, regardless of what your opinion as a fan is about like who Drake May kind of emulates more so in his game, I think maybe somewhere in the middle is kind of more so a hybrid player might be more fitting. It's kind of irrelevant just because we're seeing two guys that have early success in the league, and have a lot of similarities in their game to Drake, and we're going to see them going forward. Hopefully, if the Patriots do their job in competitive, whether or not, it's postseason matchups or just, competitive late game more or late season more so about Josh Allen, like in division, maybe division title matchups, deciding the season late in the season,
Yeah,
like uh, things that as a football fan you look forward to, even if, it doesn't necessarily fall your way. Like you look for competition and you look for, athletes that push themselves and each other, and these are, two guys that look to lead the AFC, for the next decade plus, through the 2020s. So that to me is exciting. And again, I think another big thing is you're right. Harbaugh kind of came in and made them a hard nosed football team and is clearly gotten the best out of J.K. Dobbins. Now we can talk about, total season consistency and whether or not like, we can expect, 120-yard, 2 touchdown game like we were seeing earlier in the season from J.K. But I think that they have invested a lot into that offensive line to the point where Harbaugh could be like, all right, our receiving core maybe isn't where it needs to be. Let's just run it down their throats this year. Be pretty competitive in a division where I think it'd be really hard to pry it from the Chiefs' hands this early in his coaching tenure. But he's really kind of made them a tough football team, on both sides of the ball. And for the Patriots, when there's been a lot of question marks about our mental and physical toughness, as illustrated by Gerard Mayo, like multiple times throughout the season, there is kind of a fear there. However, I do agree that as long as you have Drake May, you're in these games. Now, I still haven't seen anything from our offense to dictate or to indicate that we can like late in game win and have like a game winning drive. I mean, we got one from Brissett, earlier in the season. I believe was it against New York that we got that game winning
yeah,
drive. But at the same time, I don't necessarily put that on. I think Drake May isn't clutch, even though we've had a lot of like some late game interceptions from him. I think it's like more so kind of a buildup of issues, particularly from a discipline and fatigue standpoint from the offensive line and wide receivers late in game, where Drake May kind of has no choice but to put on his hero cape. And the hero cape doesn't work when the defense knows it's coming because they basically eliminated all of the threats on the field. So
yeah,
that's kind of like, especially against a smart coached defense like LA, like I'm interested to see, what we kind of throw at them because I think you're right. Like, I think we can be in any game, but we also have the ability to be in no game,
yeah.
which is just really weird to say about any team that's like a 3-win team. Like, generally, like looking at the Patriots last year, it was like defensively we might hold them, but offensively we will not be in like
Yeah.
competitive in any game unless it's like we hold them to under 13 points, essentially.
No, I think it's an interesting point because you have a team that has just absolutely no talent around it, and I mean, like you think about the best players on the team, and it's like Ramondre, obviously like, outside Gonzalez and Drake, man, like it's like Ramondre and Hunter Henry, and then like a massive drop off, and it's interesting to be convinced that you can be in this game because a team like the Chargers could come in here and like I could see them running running away with it on the first 5 snaps of the game, or like if they just break one on that first drive, like they mean this is a team that breaks long runs, and we're a team that gives up long runs. And I think it'll be a great testament because they do need this game. Uh, so it'll be a great test for the Patriots, which they need this game. If you can be the spoiler and you can hold this team out of the playoffs or make their road tougher, uh, it'd be awesome to see. I mean, I think we're both Justin Herbert fans. I don't think he's going to be the one who. I think he'll play a part in it when they beat you or if they beat you, but I don't think he'll be. It won't be Justin Herbert played this fantastic game and came out and won the game single handedly. It'll be Gus Edwards and all these huge fullbacks out, and I just don't think we have the heavy personnel to come out there and stop them out of the right set. So I think you're going to see a lot of the Patriots give up chunks on run plays. I think we're going to get gashed in the play action game. I think it's going to be I think it has the potential to be a really rough day for the defense, and it might not look like it on one play, but I think play after play you're going to see this team get punched in the mouth, which is tough to say. So
I think you're right. Like I think, and this isn't a knock on Herbert to say like he's not going to be the reason single-handedly we lose, but it's more so just kind of an acknowledgement of their system this year.
yeah,
And I think I think that can change for the future, depending on what kind of talent they put around him from like a receiving standpoint. But uh, that's not Herbert's job this year, and it's kind of like how it wasn't Brady's job every year to be
yeah,
Superman. And there were years where it was, and Brady could do it. 2016 kind of comes to mind. 2010, obviously 2007. Like there are certain years where it's like, all right, like it's time for you to do you. But other than that, like it's kind of also time for you not to make mistakes and allow kind of a well-rounded team and organization to kind of just win based on consistency. And I think Herbert is, a team first guy with, obviously like kind of flawless mechanics and an understanding of the game. And I think he kind of really pairs well with Harbaugh so that he's not, there isn't a lot of ego with him. And I think he's taken a step back in terms of volume this year, but understanding and probably happily understanding, given that he's not, taking as much of a beating as he had in the past, although again, their offensive line has improved, like that, hey, like we can get into the postseason and we can, be a challenging, hard-nosed football team, and it doesn't have to be because I am the end-all, be-all for my organization. And that's we want to get to that point in the next year or two before it is like we're an actual Super Bowl contender. And I know it's been more than a year or two for Herbert, more like 4 at this point. But we want to get to the point where our team is well coached and has enough I think structure on both sides of the ball that we don't necessarily need Drake May to be uh, what we're seeing out of Josh Allen this year. Granted, I think Drake May might be more kind of prone to that style than a Herbert is because I think like naturally he's just uh, a really compelling athlete out of structure. I think Herbert's athleticism is a little underrated. I mean, just because he really has been screwed with like just poor, I think, drop percentages and just receiving play as of late. Like I've seen him throw some like immaculate balls that just, Quentin's not coming down with. And that's kind of been the case for him a lot over his years. But I mean, his stats speak for themselves. Like he's, I think he's going to be the fastest, player to average what like however many yards over the first 5 seasons of their career. Like he's going to be up there with a couple games to spare with like Peyton Manning in terms of yardage output over the first however many seasons. So like he is a threat, but less so as you say from like kind of like a game breaking put the team on his back, but just because he's going to make the right read at the right time, he's going to throw
yeah,
the perfect ball, and he only has 3 picks on the season, and that was kind of something that I highlighted going in. Was just that like he's not been statistically dominant as you said, but he's really kind of played to his strengths and his role in this offense this year. And again, only 3 picks is worrying for a Patriots defense that's starved of turnovers and has a -9 turnover ratio this year, whereas the Chargers are +10 in that category, and that's good for like a share of fourth in the league. So this is a team that is top 5 in terms of turnover percentages in totality when you're factoring in offense and defense. and that's not great for a team like New England that needs those turnovers and got some this past week or got one off Josh Allen. I don't think you're going to get some of those kind of gutsy, as you said, like that play that Mapu kind of picked off in the end zone. Like it's you're not going to get like a real boneheaded throw like that from Justin Herbert. Not this year, and not under Harbaugh.
Yeah, no, I think obviously it helps to turn the ball over when you want to win football games, and I think I think that's going to be a it's going to be a long day for the Patriots defense. I don't think the pressure really affects him too much. I think he's good enough to be able to pick out the hole in the blitz, and so you're going to have a it's going to be a long day. I really don't think. I think if the Patriots stand any chance in this game, they're going to have to stand up to the run and stop that, and force them to become a little bit one dimensional in the pass game, and you're going to have to see a great game from secondary guys like Mapu probably, and Alex Austin, and I think John Jones highlight great game last week, but I don't think Gonzalez is going to be able to take away their number one guy because they don't have a number one guy. So whoever he's on, you don't really have to worry about it. But I think that not having a number one guy with a quarterback as good as Herbert is kind of a blessing in disguise, where there's not somebody you have to look at to take away. So you're going to see some interesting combinations from DeMarcus Covington. I think you're going to need to see the interior win. I think you're gonna because I don't think you're gonna much of a fuss with. I don't know who your edge rushers even are taking on Joel and Rashawn Slater. So if you're gonna crush the pocket, I think Herbert, like you said, is probably a little bit underrated in that out of structure play. If you let him beat you out of structure, that's probably a really bad sign. You're
Yeah.
probably getting smacked in the face already by a couple deep balls that you didn't want to let go. So for not having a truly good receiving threat, this team moves the ball through the passing through the passing game. So
So I kind of it hadn't been something I went into I think this talk thinking about, but you kind of posed an interesting point with like we're kind of at an opposite situation. What we had 2 weeks ago with Arizona, where like we wondered, hey, is Covington going to recognize we need to eliminate Marvin Harrison Jr. From this game, and we saw like Gonzalez matched up with him in man, like a lot, and it was kind of encouraging because we had some beef with Covington throughout the year of like, hey, can we just have Drake May on their best receiver? Or sorry, can we have Christian Gonzalez on their best receiver? Uh, you know, because we need to eliminate the biggest weapon on the offense. This week's different. You're right. Like I wouldn't want to have Gonzalez shadow Lad McConkey all day because
yeah,
I don't think that's necessary. And also, you're right. It kind of frees us up to spin the dial in certain ways. So I didn't prepare my BS prop bets like I did last week, but I do have a question for you. Just thinking about it off the top of my head, given what you're kind of laying out for us, like, do you see over under point 0.5 cornerback blitzes specifically from Christian Gonzalez this week? Do you think we spin the dial when we're dealing with two of the best tackle set in the league? Do you think we get a little creative with some secondary blitzes, particularly maybe with Gonzalez, but possibly like a Jonathan Jones?
yeah, it'd be encouraging to see because I think you're gonna have to figure out if you can force them to become one dimensional and you can stay in the way to really stop this freaking rushing attack that I think is going to give you fits. But if you can get them into third and longs and make it third and passing, I mean, it'd be really encouraging to see something like that because you have not seen too much in the way of stunts and stuff like that this season. So I think anything that if you want to give them different looks, I think that's a good idea. But I don't know if that's going to be where you. I think if you see a great game from Lad McConkey or Jordan Palmer, it's going to be a bad day for the Patriots defense. So
So I have another talking point. I just pulled up the Patriots injury report, and
yeah,
and I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss that Ben Brown will be out with the concussion
yeah,
Saturday. That's obviously something of note. Marcus Jones won't be there, so I was gonna be like, hey, what are the odds we maybe get a Marcus Jones package, both on offense but also maybe from a pass rush standpoint. But he's out for the second week straight. A couple other questionables, notably Duggar, Tavai, Wallace, but also Cole Strange. So, what are the Patriots doing if Ben Brown and Cole Strange are both out Saturday? Like that's an interesting conversation that we should probably be perusing the practice squad for. Uh,
yeah. It's definitely a practice squad elevation, which is not what you want to hear. But
Not with the
I don't
rookie
know.
quarterback, especially.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it'll be encouraging if Paul Strange goes. I think I read somewhere that he's looking okay. So I'll be paying attention to that, obviously, but it'll be encouraging to see Cole Strange if he can go at center. Like that's just a huge benefit. That's the thing because I don't think Ben Brown is a long term solution. I definitely don't think
No, yeah.
Andrews is a long term solution. So and like I mean, I don't even want to get into the O line issues, but over the past few years. But I think it's hugely encouraging if Cole Strange can come in and be a solid piece. So
Yeah, absolutely, especially after, I mean, the value we gave up in drafting him where we did, but also just kind of a career marred by inconsistency and injuries. So
yeah,
that's something to look for in the last two games of the season if we're going to take any positives from what is a pretty tough stretch down the road. So any other kind of interesting? Actually, no. There's another thing I wanted to talk about.
sure.
My favorite narrative of this week's game. Can you guess what it is? My favorite narrative, a homecoming of sorts, if you will.
Hunter Henry playing against his old team. I don't know.
That was another thing that was a side point that I had set aside, which is Henry had obviously been asked a lot of questions in the media going into the season and during the season about similarities between two guys that had received a lot of comparisons, and he kind of played into some of it while also being like they have different skill sets, they're different guys, but they're both great leaders. So that's obviously a great I think topic of discussion going forward. However, it's not as cool as the return of the Bugatti, the Rieger revenge game, the boy Jalen Rieger back in the building after setting the world ablaze with his interesting meme choice after having been
Yeah,
cut, and just obviously his underwhelming performance outside of some flashes on special teams, the Patriots. So Rieger revenge game, look for it.
yeah.
I wonder if they're gonna scheme him up a little bit in the offense, spin the dial, if you will, for good old friend Jalen. That's funny to me, especially after the Bugatti and the whatever the meme is. I don't know what the label of it is. It's kind of just more visual than anything, but that's something to keep an eye out for. I mean, he probably will have no impact on the game, but it's just a silly little thing.
Well, it's just funny to look back on whenever it was 6 months ago, five. No, it's probably like 5 months ago when we were talking about this. But like when you came in, you're like, man, we're gonna have six guys, and they're all gonna be not good. And
Yeah.
now, like shockingly, probably the best one of all of them is Junior, which is just like ridiculous. Like I know he's probably not good, but he definitely has the most catches, and he's gonna be on the best team, obviously. But
Does he actually have the? There's no shot out of all the Patriots receivers, dude. No shot. He was injured like for weeks.
let's find out. This is a great question because it would be really sad if he has
That
no.
would be crazy. Look, he had a great game after Rashi Rice went down, which
Yeah,
speaking of Rashi Rice, who was one of my fantasy casualties this year, but still made it to the fantasy playoffs in we'll
oh
call it
yeah.
A League that you and I are in, our fantasy championship. So we have that to look forward to. And if I lose, I will solely blame it on the Rashi Rice
Oh,
injury that happened 5 weeks into the season. So just
you're
so you
lucky.
know, prepare for the excuses. Yeah.
Sorry, one sec. Yeah, Kayshon Booty's barely beating. Not barely. He has like 15, 20 more receptions. But what were you saying about
I was
fantasy?
gonna say Booty's probably, but I mean, I wouldn't like just given Booty's volume, how influx it is. I wouldn't have been surprised if Douglas was like somewhat near there. I mean, Polk is obviously not even remotely close, but uh, just talking like if I lose to you in the fantasy championship over these next 2 weeks, I'm just gonna say it's because Rashi Rice went down in week 4, which is a baby move, but I'm gonna do it. You're gonna hear
no,
it.
no,
Can't accept defeat.
no. I mean, I remember night one being like that. That's the pick of the draft. I mean, he saved because I mean, you probably remember last year, but he saved me. I mean, he and Tank Dell were my saving graces last.
Yeah, wow. You had some
And
great fantasy pickups on the waiver wire last year. Like really impressive.
I mean, we don't have to really talk about it for too long, but the ExPats Super Bowl coming home to one of the
Yeah, that's nice.
that is pretty cool. I'm pretty excited. I mean, back-to-back years in the finals. I mean, that's got to mean something, even if I lose. So,
Here's what I'll say is I was joking about the Rashi Rice thing because your team has been such a dumpster fire this year, and the fact that you've made it this far, like if I lose to your team, like that's just on me. Like, there's nothing like you went with such bold swing, and it might pay off. But at the same time, your destiny was not in your hands. Like most of the year, and you somehow eked by based on like random mathematical improbabilities. So, you are the Cinderella. You are the Wonder Kid, and it's really hard for me not to kind of want you to win as well. But it is. I will say you're the person, outside of a couple other people I know play fantasy, well in the league that I can stomach losing to the most because like if someone that I don't respect or know their ball knowledge well, like I don't know some of the people in the league that well, like if I don't know if they come in and they beat me, I'm gonna be pissed because I put time into this,
sure.
even if they don't. And like I know that like I know and respect your ball knowledge. Whether or not you're, a fantasy tinkerer is another conversation. But I don't know a lot of these no names, and if they went and like beat me in the play, I would be a wreck, dude. That would be so much worse because I don't want my season to end by some random like
Oh,
random dude with some like generic Italian name, not calling out any names, Dom. Like who the hell's Dom anyway, dude? I think he's an NPC, dude. I don't know.
it
He
is.
just showed up in the league, played real well all season, and he just domed it up in the postseason. So thank you, Dom, for doming it up. But are you
No,
really are you really a real person? I don't know. I just frankly
the
don't know.
the last he lost like 5 weeks in a row. Like it was pretty humbling for a guy like that who had been number two in the league all year and just a false.
Yeah.
But no, I think if you get, I mean, I'll share a little bit about my story about like just having like the balls to take like some real swings. Like I have. Dude, you can't even tell me that those weren't like swinging for the freaking Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison. Marvin Harrison's been the real disappointment, but like freaking, I don't know. You got to swing for the fences, man. And it's such a probability. Like you said, it's such a game of just pure luck. And like, I always say that like making the playoffs is like skill, but like winning a championship is like once you're in, you're in. Like we're
Yeah,
dancing
yeah,
right now,
yeah. We're
and so
dancing,
like
yeah.
and like right now, like it's if Brian Thomas is a great game on Sunday, and then like I don't even know, like if Malik Neighbors is the real like if Malik Malik Neighbors week to week could either be like 30 points or it could be five, and then in the last minute he scores like 10 points.
Dude,
That's
Drew
always
Lock, Drew Lock scares me way more than Tommy DeVito does from like a
I
Malik
know.
Neighbors standpoint. Uh,
Oh, you mean like in a positive way? I hate watching the Giants. I'll like have it on Red Zone. I'll be like, oh,
I refuse to watch them, but I will say like I've seen Drew Lock get random confidence and like swag, if you will, at like just in order, like just insane spots in whether a game or a season, and it's like, did Malik Neighbors really just have like 10 for 150? Like what the hell is going on,
it
Drew
could
Lock?
happen.
So that kind of scares me a little bit, but like. Yeah, you took some like your receiver swings were just insane, and you didn't draft BTJ, so
I
let's put
know.
that out there. You like it wasn't like if you took one of those rookie receivers, I would have respected it. But the fact that you took both of them as your top two receiving picks was just an insane thing to have done. But the thing that you did well was you drafted running backs, even though like Brees was pretty inconsistent. The Jameer Gibbs
Yeah,
pickup, I was a little wary of Detroit just because they were splitting carries, but
yeah.
no matter which of those two guys you took, you were doing well up until about a week or so ago when
Yeah.
Montgomery fortunately went down. But you took a lot of good swings at running back, and for the second year in a row, you have not been punished yet for your quarterback lack of your ill-disciplined quarterback drafting. And who knows, like Josh Allen isn't playing for the one seed anymore, so potentially he might fold for me. We'll see, although
I
after this
know.
past week. But I'm confident going in, like, to the matchup. I'm looking at Allen, and I'm like, I'll take Allen over whoever the hell Lucas is going to throw out there. Although Jared Goff's been playing unreal, so you know what? Not anymore, because he was sitting on waivers all year, and you pick him up, and he might be a league winner for you. So,
I know.
not to totally bog down our expats conversation with fantasy talk, but yeah, that's kind of scary. But I'm excited to be playing you. I'm excited that Butker had an underwhelming game
I
on
know.
Christmas. So I mean, it's not like he had a 0 pointer, but
But he missed
that
one.
scares. Because
And
look at the last couple weeks, I was getting like 20 points out of my kickers that I would just waiver wire add based on matchups and my defenses. So like, if that's how you break someone, is if your kicker and defense gets like plus 10 points, like that's how you really like
straight
put
up.
someone in a coffin. So the fact that I know for a fact your kicker won't break the bank this week is, I'm living to fight another day with that one. We'll see. We'll
No,
see how it goes, though.
I think it's all gonna come down to it's gonna be great if they don't suit Josh Allen up to play against us because I will be. I was like thinking about going to that game because obviously I'm here and like the tickets are like $40 for the games,
Yeah.
so I'm like thinking about going and I was like I'm not about to go watch Mitch Trubisky play football. Like it'd be cool to see
Yeah.
Drake, but like I met Mitch Trubisky over the summer and I was so close to calling him and the Nickelodeon most valuable player.
Yeah, the MVP, dude.
Uh, I decided not to. So
If I lose the fantasy shit because Josh Allen is benched the final week of the season, that would be brutal, dude. But
that
we both have some interest, like the Cardinals now out of the playoffs, and James Conner having like a knee injury last week. Like he's been my bell cow lately. That's scary. But it also, I don't know what it means for Marvin Harrison going forward. It might
ooh,
mean more than for James Conner because James Conner probably won't get the volume. But I wonder, dude. We have a lot of narratives to go forward, but we don't necessarily have to, waste time on expats talking about all the fantasy BS. But I am in two fantasy football championships with you, and if I get second place in both, that would be rough.
who's in the other one?
Yeah, Jack, dude,
No
Jack
way.
McCosker, yes, dude, Jack. And
Let's go.
I had Mark Andrews put up like a 15-point game, and he
Yeah,
had a Nico Collins 9 piece. So I'm feeling confident coming out of those Christmas Day matchups in the B League. So I have a
dude,
chance to bring home two trophies with two different friend circles, and that would be huge for me
that'd be cool.
uh, because I wouldn't know how to handle it, and I'd just be an egomaniac. But hopefully for the sake of the league, I lose both, and all is right with the world. So
Hopefully.
yeah. All right. Any last thoughts on the Chargers before we kind of
Nah, man.
put it in the hands of fate and Drake May and just let it rip?
No, I think we did it, man. I think that was a good one. So follow us on LinkedIn. No, no, not on LinkedIn. On TikTok. On
Follow us on WeChat.
yeah, exactly.
Follow us on TikTok before TikTok isn't a thing anymore. Follow us on WhatsApp, dog. Like
Yeah,
we're gonna be changing up our social platforms pretty soon,
yeah.
depending on what happens in the coming month. But the boy Lucas has put in a lot of time and effort on our social platforms. So for all of you listening, give it a look, give it a follow, give it a like, and write something mean in the comments about me. I don't care.
Yeah, we don't
Nothing I
care.
haven't said to myself. So let her rip.
All right. Well, I think we did it.
Yeah, go
We'll see
Pats.
you guys next time.